In 6th century BCE India, an ascetic rebellion fractured the established religious order. A growing movement of wandering ascetics, known as the Shramanas, began actively rejecting the ritual-heavy, sacrifice-driven system of Vedic Brahmanism. You already know the two most successful schools to emerge from this rebellion, Buddhism and Jainism. Both survived, adapted, and spread globally. But historical records show a third, massive faction existed right alongside them, a school of thought called Aseevagam, or the Ajeevakas. Today, they are almost entirely forgotten. The Ajeevakas commanded institutional power. They secured the patronage of Emperor Ashoka's own family and maintained an active presence in South India for nearly 1,000 years. So we have to ask what exactly the Ajeevakas believed that set them apart, what physical evidence they actually left behind, and why a faction with that much momentum ultimately went extinct. This map of ancient India shows where these ideologies clashed. The Ganges River Valley was the philosophical epicenter of the era, serving as the launching pad for all three Shramana movements. From here, Buddhism spread outward, crossing the continent and reaching deep into Asia. Jainism laid down its roots with a distinct geographical footprint, primarily consolidating its power in western and central India. The Ajeevakas took a different path. While their northern influence faded, the movement moved steadily southward, embedding itself deeply into Tamilokam, the ancient Tamil country. Tracing their exact historical footprint is difficult because Ajeevagam's original scriptures are gone. To study them today, we have to reconstruct their doctrines using the surviving texts of their fiercest rivals. This matrix breaks down how the major ancient Indian traditions viewed human agency. By mapping their stances on karma, free will, the soul, and ritual, we can see exactly where they diverged. Jainism and Buddhism both rely heavily on karma. In these systems, human free will is central. Your current choices directly shape your future outcomes. Aseevagam rejected that entirely. They operated on the doctrine of niyati, or absolute cosmic determinism. Every event, from birth to salvation, is strictly pre-written. They also held a strictly material view of the soul. Aseevagam's thinkers proposed an early atomic theory, arguing that life is physically constructed from indivisible atoms moving through a fixed cosmic design. This absolute determinism offered immense psychological relief to its followers. By erasing karma, niyati removed the burden of personal failure. If you were suffering, it wasn't punishment for a past sin. It was simply the unchangeable script of the universe playing out. But that relief came with a fatal structural trade-off. If every action is predetermined, there is no logical reason to strive for moral improvement. By eliminating agency, Ajeevagam removed the societal incentives required to build a sustainable, growing community. We know they achieved massive scale because they left physical proof. The Ajeevakas were a highly organized, state-sponsored institution. Inscriptions at the Barabar cave entrances confirm Mauryan emperors dedicated complexes to Ajeevaka monks. They were the first ascetic community using permanent stone architecture. In South India, their presence is confirmed by ancient Tamil literature. Buddhist and Jain epics from the Sangam and post-Sangam eras, like the Markali, feature entire sections outlining Ajeevaka doctrine.
However, these texts are deeply compromised. Because the authors were rival monks, the Ajeevakas are consistently depicted as the antagonists. The texts regularly mock their beliefs and portray Markali Gosala as foolish or corrupt. The trade-off for relying on these sources is that our view of Ajeevagam is permanently distorted. We have undeniable proof of their scale in stone, but their inner lives are trapped behind the hostile lens of the people who defeated them. Recently, Ajeevagam has been pulled into modern political debates. A contemporary movement has attempted to rebrand the Ajeevakas as the original rationalist religion of the Tamil people, free from Vedic influence. This modern narrative heavily emphasizes the secular elements of their philosophy. It highlights early atomism and points to Ajeevaka figures like Pakudugai Nankanyar as pioneering scientific thinkers rather than religious ascetics. But the historical texts present a much more complicated reality. Academic research into ancient Tamil literature shows a fluid spiritual economy where diverse paths overlapped. The Sangam texts record ancient Tamils practicing Vedic and Bhakti traditions alongside these Shramana ascetic paths. The trade-off of adopting the modern rationalist narrative is that it requires selectively editing the past. It offers a clean, secular political identity for the present, but it requires ignoring the vast, documented reality of Tamil history to get there. Aseevagam's influence eroded over centuries as it was slowly squeezed out of the spiritual market of ideas. While Aseevagam offered strict fatalism, its rivals provided practical social frameworks. Buddhism scaled by emphasizing community compassion and accessible teachings, while Jainism built a highly dedicated lay follower base through its clear moral rules. Eventually, the rise of the Bhakti movement in South India delivered the final blow. The shift toward vibrant temple devotion in Shaivism and Vaishnavism offered followers an emotional connection and a sense of belonging that solitary asceticism lacked. Aseevagam's extinction was the result of a philosophy that couldn't adapt. Its severe, fatalistic worldview simply could not compete with belief systems that offered their followers moral agency, personal devotion, and a supportive community. This chart maps the philosophical landscape of ancient India. On the horizontal axis, we measure the focus on human agency, from strict fatalism to karma. On the vertical axis, we measure the reliance on deities, from material atheism to high devotion. Aseevagam sits isolated in the extreme bottom left corner. It was a fiercely non-theistic, material philosophy that entirely rejected human free will. For the historian or philosophy student, digging into the Aseevagas provides a masterclass in ancient atomism. It proves that India's historical landscape was a complex ecosystem of competing ideas, far broader than a simple Hindu versus Buddhist binary. For those seeking modern political validation, it's important to recognize that the historical Aseevagas were an austere, naked ascetic order. Projecting a 21st century secular political movement backward onto their legacy distorts who they actually were. True historical literacy requires looking at the past in all its complex, contradictory glory. When we accept the Aseevagas as they were, flaws, extreme views, and all, we get a much sharper, more honest picture of how human thought actually evolved.